Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And it seems that me and you, good viewer, are not the only one who find these hate laws that are coming in to be completely ridiculous, as well as probably unpoliceable and unenforceable. It now seems that others are starting to take note, including the Institute of Economic Affairs, which has said that it is actually stifling free speech, has many problems with the bill, and says that people like J.K. Rowling, for example, could be prosecuted simply for having gender-critical views. It's a very open minefield. And the problem, of course, is that nobody really has ever defined in this law what hate is. And of course, we know that it would be so easy to ridicule this law and to make it unenforceable simply by obeying it. And there's the thing. All we have to do to completely eradicate this nonsense is to obey the law and to phone up the police every time we encounter hate speech. But we'll take a look at it and we'll make sure that everyone is aware and everybody knows what's going on, and we all know how to defeat it. But I would ask before we get in there, I'm still getting people contacting me and saying that they're getting automatically unsubscribed. YouTube does this from time to time, and it's a bit naughty of them, but it's because we're a political channel. So do please check that you are subscribed, ring that bell, hit the button. And if you're not subscribed and never have been, then please do subscribe. We need to push the channel. We need to get the truth out there, and it's things like this story, which is most definitely the sort of things that those on the left absolutely hate, because they hate the truth. Here goes. So, free speech under attack in SNP Scotland, says report with Humza Yousaf's hate crime bill labelled a constraint of liberty. And of course, one of the biggest problems, as I've mentioned, is that nobody actually defines what hate is. What one person thinks annoying, another person may call hate. But it may not even be hate. It just may be that individual's understanding of it seems as though it is hateful, even when it isn't. And so, for example, you don't insult a Muslim, but you're free to criticise Islam, because people have rights, but ideas do not. And therefore, it is perfectly acceptable to criticise Islam, but not to criticise a Muslim for being brainwashed enough to follow it. See what I did there? Perfectly legal. However, what I can say is free and open. I can say more or less what I like. Whether you agree with it or not is another matter, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I am hate speaking. And so, for example, I can say I do not want men who pretend to be women going into women's changing rooms. I'm perfectly entitled to say that. That is not a crime. However, those people, the pretendy Wendy's, might say, oh, look at you being transphobic. But it's not. I'm expressing an opinion that is my deeply held philosophical belief. 2010 Equality Act, very useful piece of legislation. Also, of course, you are covered by the European Convention on Human Rights, which actually sits atop Scottish law, actually sits atop UK law. It's very high in the list of international laws. And of course, that is prioritising over any kind of hate law that Humza Yousaf feels he needs to bring in to protect people like him. But basically it says, and when I say it's enshrined, I'm going to use the word it's enshrined, it isn't implicit, it's actually explicitly put in there that you have the right to your opinion and to express your opinion of views not agreed with by the majority of the population. And so it gives you the right to say more or less what you like. Now, obviously, there are constraints within what you say. You still generally can't get away with saying the N-word, or, there's various other words. And of course, technically, there's no free speech on YouTube. I can say these things, but they demonetize you. And if you say it too often, they can actually take your channel away by using certain words. But that's fine. You can still get concepts across without using specific words. So, you don't have to say the word that is the N-word, but as soon as I say the N-word, you all know what it is. And so you can get the concept across by careful, judicious use of language. But the underlying principle of it is that whatever I'm trying to express, I have the right to express under international law. It's a wonderful thing. And of course, I can say more or less what I like, so long as I'm protected by the 2010 Equality Act. And of course, the worst thing about all this, and before we get into it, is of course, it's utterly ridiculous. Now, I mentioned in the header that you can defeat this quite easily simply by obeying it. And of course you can, because nobody has said what hate is the very weakness of this bill. And so on day one, now technically it's day one today, it technically hits the books today, but it won't be enforced until all the police have received like judicious training and things. So don't hold your breath. But it technically is on the books as of today. So technically I could sit now and say Group A are a bunch of, insult. And technically that would be a hate crime. But there's nothing they can do because, firstly, of course, I'm not actually in Scotland, which is rather detrimental to their facts. They can't prosecute me. I'm outside their area of influence. But even if I were, they couldn't prosecute me anyway because all I have to do is say it is my deeply held philosophical belief. And I'm a winner. But the obedience thing is simple. What you do is whenever you hear anything that you just don't like, not saying it's hate speech or anything, but you just don't like it, just phone up the police and make a complaint. Make a complaint under the hate laws and say, I believe I've suffered from hate speech. And the law is so badly written and so badly developed that all you have to do is say, no, I believe there was a hate crime committed. And the police are obliged within the act of the law itself, within this bill, they are obliged to investigate. And imagine that there was, say, 5.5 million people in Scotland. Let's say 2 million people a day decided that what we're going to do is every time we hear someone say anything, we're going to phone the police and make a complaint under the hate crime laws. 2 million people a day. And they could ring up. No end of times. 3, 4, 5 times a day. There could be 10 million complaints made a day. And that's how you defeat this stupid, ridiculous bill. Devised by a stupid, ridiculous little man. Anyway, we'll just very quickly pass through this. It's not big, but it is worth going through. The report from the Institute of Economic Affairs claims the culture control left, because it is always the left, isn't it, has weaponised concepts like hate speech, says the legislation pushed through by the Scottish Government could actively encourage politically partial prosecutions. And that means prosecutions made simply because the authorities don't like the colour of your jib. They don't like your politics. So they'll prosecute you because of your views. That is not justice. That is not democracy. Free speech is under threat in SNP-run Scotland, according to a new report published on Tuesday. The document, Dictating Words, very clever title, has been compiled by the free market think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good group. It claims that the moves creating hate crime laws will lead to criminalising peaceful political expression, and it calls for the creation of new concepts of free speech to overcome rising censorship demands. Yeah, they're basically saying that this is coming in because the authorities don't like the views of the masses. And that's mainly because the views of the masses are totally against what this little cabal at the top like. Because most people don't like what they're doing, don't like what they're saying, and don't like the enforcement of political ideas through brainwashing and gaslighting. It is completely wrong. While most of the report focuses on the UK government policy, the Scottish Government also comes in for criticism. In particular, Humza Yousaf's Hate Crime and Public Order Bill creates a greater tendency to constrain the liberty of individuals to express their political views, according to the report's author. And of course, he's absolutely right. You can't stand and say things now that the authorities don't like because they can prosecute you for it. They can't, of course. And this will fail in court every single time. But the very fact that it exists acts in itself as some kind of social censorship. Oh, you can't say that, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And it's trying to make people live in a state of fear from expressing their views. And it is so bad that I could sit in here with my wife having a private conversation. Somebody walking past the window looks in, we look at that person and talk. They could then take that as us talking about them in a hateful manner, phone the police. The police would be obliged to come to my house, knock on the door and question me. We don't live in a police state and we shouldn't expect to. And so this law has to go. And it's something that we all must fight. Passed in 2021 at Holyrood, the Hate Crime Act was pushed forward by now First Minister Humza Yousaf when he was Justice Secretary to create a new offence of stirring up hatred against protected groups. And of course, in his mind, it means only one particular protected group. He was pushing this because down at the mosque, That's what they wanted, and they are, after all, his boss. He owes them loyalty. He does not owe loyalty to the people of Scotland. And that's very, very clear. But the bill it will, and will undoubtedly attempt to stifle free speech, free expression. It will criminalise people who have views opposing what the government say the views should be. We need to keep this bill into public focus because it will not actually help anyone, and it will actually harm a lot of people. And if you make a complaint, for example, that you don't want a transgender man going in a changing room with your 8-year-old daughter and undressing and exposing himself, you would be the one prosecuted for hate crimes, while he would get away with waggling his lady penis in front of the 8-year-old's face. We've seen how scared the police are already when they wouldn't prosecute a man for punching a woman in the face because the man was in a frock. And so what hope have the children of Scotland got with this bill? And that's why we've got to fight it, and fight it we must. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to come up, we'll round off this video. Now, of course, I could have got angry in that and said, oh, it's a repudiation of all that's well and decent, and we're taking our rights and freedoms of expression away, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to do that. We really don't. We have the ECHR. We have the 2010 Equality Act. They're both they both have primacy over Scottish law. And, of course, we also have the plain, simple truth that the law itself is utterly ridiculous, utterly unenforceable, utterly unpoliceable. And all we have to do is, as I say, just keep reporting any perceived hate crime to the police. They are obliged to report it. They're obliged to investigate it. And it goes in. And when they are busy doing all that and nothing else can get done, then the chief police officer, Joe, can't remember her name, begins with F, doesn't it? What is her name? I'm going to have to Google this, Sorry. Look, real-time research. Farrell. Don't need to research it. Farrell. Joe Farrell, the new chief of Scottish Police, will basically just say, no, we don't investigate it, we can't do it. And she'll have to go to Humza Yousaf or whoever is in charge next time and say, no, we're not doing it, take it off the books, it's unenforceable. And that's what's going to happen. And it is, and it's just a joke. And all we have to do is keep ridiculing everyone. Ridicule everyone. Because the one thing politicians can't abide. They can take insults, they get it all the time. Water off a duck's back. They don't like that. They don't like this. Ridicule. Ridicule is the one thing they cannot abide because they're very, very serious about their public image. They don't want to look ridiculous, regardless of how ridiculous they look. Thank you very much for watching. Do please hit the subscribe button. This was quite a good one, I think. Anyway, do give me your comments down. I do want to see what you think. And tell me if you're willing to join us in the crusade to get rid of this terrible, awful, stupid law that a terrible, awful, stupid man brought in. Till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.